The history of the Bible is a little different than a lot of people think, or the way it's even presented. And I looked at a lot of material before I would even print this section here, because there's so many contradictions. There's just so many, well, not just contradictions, just out and out lies, out and out lies. How many of you have heard that this King James Bible was translated directly from the Textus Receptus? How many have heard that? It's not true. It's not true. Do you know what this Bible really represents? It's not a translation at all. This is a revision of the bishop's Bible. A revision of the bishop's Bible. Well, what is the bishop's Bible? A revision of the Great Bible. What's the Great Bible? It's a revision of the Geneva Bible. What's the Geneva Bible? It came out of the Tyndale Williams Bible, out of the Coverdale Bible. Where did it was a revision of the William Tyndale Bible. Where did that Bible? It came from William Tyndale. Where did that come from? The first English Bible was translated in Germany. How many knew that? The first English Bible was translated in Germany. You knew that?
Well, yeah, it was at the Bible Museum in St. Petersburg.
There you go. Well, not everybody was, Joe. Good. All right. So how many translations of the Bible are there? About one? That's all. So Tyndale, he went to Germany to translate the English Bible. Did he have any help? Yeah, who? Martin Luther. He's a German. Did he have any documents? Yeah, Martin Luther's. Martin Luther had Erasmus's collection of Greek manuscripts, which later became known as the Textus Receptus. Okay? Martin Luther translated his German version from those texts and the Vulgate. See? I mean, when in doubt, look at somebody who's already done it. You learn things. I mean, Jerome, who translated the Vulgate back in 382 BC, I mean, he was no fool. I mean, this man's a genius. And he did a good work. I mean, considering what he had, and that wasn't a translation. It was a renovation of all the bad Latin versions that were scattered around. The versions were so bad, so corrupt, so chock full of errors, and just not scholarly works at all, that Jerome said, we need a decent copy of the Scriptures in Latin. And that's what he translated it, you see. And, now we have such things as the Alexandria and the Codex Sinaiticus and the Codex Vaticanus. They didn't have any of that stuff. The oldest manuscript that they had back when Coverdale and Luther and all these guys, the oldest manuscript they had was from the 10th century. From the 10th century, and nothing older. So, really, in the last 100 years, a lot of stuff has been found. The Sinaiticus, that stuff's all found in the 1800s, not back in the 13th, 14th, 15th century. So we have the benefit of all this stuff now. We can look at it, and it's been studied so much. I mean, you can't even fathom how many tens of thousands of people and scholars and theologians have pored over these manuscripts and compared them and tried to figure out where they came from and who wrote it and what was their motive and is this thing pure and so on and so on. And then, you have these manuscripts you have these manuscripts like the Sinaiticus, which is the oldest complete New Testament in Greek. It's the entire Greek New Testament from Matthew to Revelation. About 350, I think, somewhere around there, about 350. Okay? Now, before 350 A.D., there is not a manuscript on the face of the earth that contains the Old Testament. The Old or the New Testament. None. Not one. But there's lots of fragments. It's amazing. They'll have a fragment about this big that they'll find someplace, archaeologists, and it'll have 8 words from the book of Zedekiah. And so they'll study those 8 words and compare. They'll find it in another more recent and see how it compares. See, and the shapes of the pen strokes and all this technical stuff, and then they can date it. See, they'll notice the shape of some of the letters, and then they'll compare that through history. 300, 400, 500, no, 200, 100. 100 BC, yes. Here's a tomb of some famous person. We know it was 78 BC, and the same letters. 100 years later, they're changing. This fragment is at least 100 BC. You see how they put this stuff together? It takes years and years and years. You ever wonder how they date stuff? They got the old dynasty and the new dynasty, and then we got Mahutmos II and all these different kings, and he lived in this year. Did you ever figure, how did they know that? How did they know that was 1847 BC? Did they find that on a calendar someplace? It's an amazing study how they... back in, I think in the 17th, 1800s, they had all these king lists of Egypt. They had all these kings which ruled after each other, and they had different king lists in Syria and Babylon, and all these king lists, but they didn't know where any of them connected. Should this list be up here or down here? What about this list up here? What's the... They start getting them in relationship to each other. Okay, these kings lived when this set of kings, because he married this guy's sister, because we just saw it on a tomb. And they start getting the lists coordinated. They still don't know where all the lists go. And one thing that was a major key was they found some piece of absolute historical documentation on some event in history that fell on an eclipse, right? And they could go back in planetariums and pinpoint the day of that eclipse, and the whole thing fell in place. They now know the date of the eclipse and that event ties to this event and this event, and down in China and over Russia, and they start all coming together on one event, an eclipse. Absolutely amazing stuff. But this is what God says, is people are running to and fro, and knowledge is being increased. Putting this stuff together. And you might think there's a lot of history being lost. It's not really. History was lost for many centuries, but now it's being found. And when we find it, we preserve it. We put it under glass, humidity control. We're preserving stuff now. So it's kind of an exciting time to live. Because I think there's some real things around the corner. Some people are afraid of it. Some people are kind of afraid of science. But I'm telling you, I'm just becoming more and more convinced. Bring it on, because it fits. You say, well, we always thought that God created the heavens and earth 6,000 years ago. Now they're telling it was more than it was more like 6 billion. What do you know? My faith is crumbling. No, I'm going to build some of that faith back up, you're going to see that this first chapter of Genesis falls right in line with what scientists are now seeing. It does not fall in line with what theologians have said for 2,000 years. It does not. But it does fall in line with true science. It absolutely does. And the dinosaurs, this doesn't tell us much, but how much must you know if it's truth and God shows it to you? You see what I'm saying? Did you ever notice how in the Scriptures, when something was revealed to the apostles, it was just some little thing just opened up their understanding. Christ mentioned a word or a prophecy, and then they understood. See? Why? That's the way God does things. I mean, I don't have all these mysteries solved yet. I know it takes hundreds and hundreds of years for an acorn to turn into a giant oak tree. Why does it take so long? See, well, I think part of it has to do with this birth thing I was telling you about. God, it takes hundreds of years to grow a tree. The bristlecone pine trees in California, do you know some of them are over 5,000 years old? How many knew that? 5,000-year-old tree. It was alive long before Moses came across the Red Sea. I mean, it was a full-grown tree by then. Thousands of years old. Why does God take billions of years to build mountains? I mean, He could do it quickly. But He doesn't. That's the whole point. He doesn't. You say, well, I wish He did. Or, it makes more sense to me if God just did the magic trick like I always thought. Boom, stars. Boom, the earth. Boom, mountains, What's greater is how He did it. Okay? It's one thing to take 100 construction men, go out and they build a big building or something. It's another thing to level off a piece of land and carry out the materials and have the building build itself. Imagine that. Say, okay, go. So anybody get a group of men and build a building? Watch this. Put the materials out there. I'm going to tell the building to build itself. That's what God does. That's what God does. So watch this. Build an earth. I'm going to make the earth. I create what's necessary. I get the raw materials, but now watch this. The earth is going to create itself over billions of years. Why does He do that? I only have some glimpses into it. But like this table, things are not what they appear. God is bigger than we ever thought. He's just so much bigger, so much wiser, so much everything. And that's why it says what it says here in 1 Corinthians. Okay, we're ready for a break, trust me. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, I'm in 1 Corinthians 2:12, but the Spirit which is of God, that we might know the things that are freely given us of God, which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teaches. Well, why not? Why not teach us these things in the words of man's wisdom? What's wrong with that? It's not the way it's done. Paul knew about man's wisdom. He knew about words. He knew about meaning. He could write a full sentence. He could carry through a thought like the philosophers or the poets and all of that. But notice it. Which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the Holy Spirit teaches, comparing spiritual, it says spiritual things, but things is not in there. Even though it's not in italics, it's still not in there. Comparing spiritual with spiritual. But the natural man receives not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they're spiritually discerned. But he that is spiritual judges all things, yet he himself is judged of no man. For who has known the mind of the Lord, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. Well, we should have the mind of Christ. We're supposed to have the mind of Christ. But boy, this is a quantum leap from Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Now I lay me down to sleep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And what will happen if you die? I think I'll go to heaven. And what do you do there? We sing and we eat candy on the big rock candy mountain. It's just fairy tale nonsense. Church is fairy tale nonsense. Sunday, you go up here to Dauphin Way, huge church. And maybe some of you would listen and say, I thought that was okay. But you listen. It's nonsense. It's total, childish, unscriptural, foolish nonsense. One day I'm going to just write out what somebody's Creflo Dollar, and I'm going to write out what they say. I'm going to write it out and then analyze the words. And you will see what utter garbage it is. Just total, foolish, silly nonsense. I mean, they talk this flowery, they all got this lingo down. It's nonsense. It's meaningless nonsense, and it's all totally unscriptural. All of it. Okay, let's take a break.